semi-permanent strategic interests, as many countries have found out in the past and will no doubt continue to find out in the future. And when you're a country with strategic interests that extend, and as you grow to larger and larger parts of the world in different dimensions, it follows that your attitude to peacekeeping will be limited in its multilateral involvement dimension unless that multilateral involvement is directly aligned with China's own strategic interests, which is why you see relatively few Chinese troops peacekeeping out there. But as my colleague, the Colonel, said, China desperately needs some exercise. It hasn't been involved in a major conflict now since they went to war with my country, actually, and a proxy war with Vietnam in '79. But China is very careful, that's why, not to commit troops, because of this dichotomy. Money and diplomatic muscle and maneuver and collaboration, on the other hand, is okay. Which is why I think, Gilda, in my view, you see China taking a position that is aligned typically with interests in the P5, in the Security Council, which it is not normally aligned with in this particular area of peacekeeping. It's only one dimension. I just thought I'd spend that minute clarifying this. I wish there was a Chinese expert here to speak on peacekeeping. I'd love to hear him. No doubt I'm half wrong, but I think I'm a bit right. Okay. Let us understand, simplify, and exaggerate. I think the presentations were so clear. I understood. I hope I did. Now let me simplify and be provocative. There is a French phrase. I hope the translators can do it in Portuguese. J'accuse. This is what kills the most altruistic attempt to look at peacekeeping in the global community. We all agree that peacekeeping should be about peace first, and that peace involves livelihoods, and livelihoods involve economic and social baselines, and therefore this package is about development. But when you are neutral, as you're supposed to be as a peacekeeper, there is a conflict between being neutral and being developmental. I'm not saying it cannot be solved, and I'll give you a few examples, and then close. The conflict is that when you are no longer interested in merely keeping the peace and you begin to do the business of livelihoods baselines, you begin passing value judgments about people within a country. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who's rich? Who's poor? Who's corrupt? Who's the more powerful tribal group? Who's exploiting whom? Okay? And you have to make these judgments when you're talking about development, because development is not free of politics. It is about, fundamentally, it is about a history of exploitation and attempting to do something about it, which is probably why the specialized agencies fail so miserably, because the paradigm within which they're allowed to work is explicitly apolitical. And therefore, there is this conflict that has to be managed. And I'm not saying this to say that it should not be confronted, but to just highlight to you what an extremely difficult task the multilateral system, particularly the UN system, faces in trying to address this. It happens in other areas too. I've been for a mission, an official mission to Myanmar, where I was not allowed to meet anyone by the UN political bodies. I was told to go on mission, but I couldn't meet anybody. So I spent 7 days in a hotel and came back. The mission was ticked off. And to give you some flavor from the newspapers of what I'm saying, this conflict, just think Bosnia. Let's think of people where we are not involved as developing countries. Think Kosovo. Then come closer, let's think Afghanistan. Yeah? Everyone agrees in Afghanistan that we have to do baselines and livelihoods. But my God, even when India goes in there, the amount of j'accuse you will get from another country about what you're really doing when you're getting involved in the business of development is huge. Right? So there is this constant attempt to walk a very thin line. And Brazil, I think, has been very lucky so far not to have had to walk this line. But I assure you it will come one day. As your global engagement increases, there will be j'accuse. And I can give you that story in Haiti. It's a minority story. I don't share it, but it is there. It is there in the Wall Street Journal. And that is this, that Brazil is in Haiti because the history of Haiti, and there's always a history, was one where you had different types of colonial or let's say post-colonial powers intervening to keep the peace in Haiti. And that led to a certain balance of power in the Latin American region. And what Brazil needs to do as a powerful Latin American or South American country is project that power inter alia in the Caribbean. And Haiti is a great place to do it. I'm not saying I agree with it. So there could be a j'accuse in Haiti, and I think it will come the most successful, and Brazil is being very successful, Brazil is in Haiti. And this is an example in the Brazilian context of the potential for this fault line to emerge. I started my career in the UN actually in a peacekeeping mission in Cambodia, very long ago. I'm revealing my age. In 1992, we had UNITAC in Cambodia. And what I saw there was quite interesting, because after I was part of that mission, I actually became part of the mission because I was doing my PhD there. And my PhD was in the politics of budgets. And what I was trying to do was find a laboratory case where the budget of the country would have nothing to do with domestic politics. And I said, wow, Cambodia. You know, the state is dead. You have this UN peacekeeping mission, and they have a budget. It should have no link with domestic politics. And I found of the 4 countries I studied, Malaysia, Egypt, India, Cambodia, the most profound link with domestic politics was in Cambodia. And so, you know, in terms of this is the other problem, that what happens is that peacekeeping missions and development projects become implicated in the domestic politics of the country they're in. And I think the second challenge we have is that the political and institutional apparatus that governs peacekeeping and governs, you know, conflict resolution, peace and development, does not allow or acknowledge that this is inevitably going to be something that peacekeepers and development people in these countries will have to confront. There's no point ignoring it, but we do ignore it because of the structure of our mandates. And this is a binding constraint to effectiveness of the UN efforts to integrate peace and development. In fact, too much ownership. The other problem is a common problem in development, but it affects peacekeeping particularly, and I'll give you a short example, is history is not part of development. I'll give you an example from Cambodia. Because I'd been there, I went back in 2002, this time with the ADB, to do a mission in Cambodia on government. Now, I have a rule, no government is stupid. So the mission was, the Cambodians have people in the government who are ghost workers. They don't come to work and they're paid $40 a day. And they go home, and they never come. You know, they come once a month, they collect their pay. This is bad. Let's have civil service reform. Let's get in consultants. All right, we clean it up. So my question to that consultant, I won't mention the nationality, was, you think they're stupid, right? That they don't know this? And there's some stupid reason why they actually pay a bunch of people $40 a day, which is not a living wage, to come once a month to the office. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I was here. Luckily, I'll tell you the history. What happened was you had 3 conflict parties there with guns. And what the peacekeeping mission did was they said, Khmer Rouge, Ministry of Finance, Undersecretary. There'll be 3. 1 Khmer Rouge, 1 Royalist, and a 3rd guy. And we're going to give each of you, 2 of you are going to get $40 a day. The 3rd guy really does the job. Just give me your guns. It worked. I'm not saying this was permanent, but if you don't understand this history and you go in there and you say, oh my God, I'm going to do like civil service reform. I'm so smart. You're going to get another civil war. So this is the other problem in peacekeeping and in that we have to be very conscious of. And I hope Brazil is conscious of this in Haiti, but it's important. I'll conclude by just speaking about the multi-pronged approach. And I said this deliberately to provoke debate about, you know, that conflict is not a nice thing and it's not something we are independent of. And I think it's important to get our hands dirty when we have a discussion on conflict resolution. On the multi-pronged approach, in theory, it's very simple. You have the SRSG, the Special Rep of the Secretary General, and you'll notice in your slide kernel, actually, it was quite clean. I disagree with you, if I may. The military command structure was under one DSRSG, and then the rest is under somebody else. So in principle, you have already ring-fenced the military operation from the civilian operations that are going on. And then you have, in most countries which are developing, where you have a conflict, you have a program under the resident coordinator. The trouble is, and both report to the Secretary General, both get their credentials from the SG of the UN. But the trouble is the political side, which is that the SRSG process reports to the Security Council. The UNDP, UN Resident Coordinator process, reports ultimately, actually to nobody except an executive board, but technically to ECOSOC. And there is no conversation or interest within the major powers of this world at this time in the ECOSOC. They don't care about ECOSOC. They care about the Security Council, and actually, if you're honest, that's also true of our countries.